So it used to be that homeowners plan to pay off their mortgages and live out retirement debt free. But a 2018 survey by national mortgage firm American Financing found that 44% of Americans between the ages of 60 and 70 have a mortgage when they retire. Nearly 17% think it's possible they will never pay off the mortgage, and a stunning 32% predict it will take more than 8 years. Why is that? Well, for many families, it's the price of sending their child to a costly college. We've all heard that student loan debt is rising. Americans owe over $1.71 trillion in student loan debt. That's 45 million borrowers. The class of 2019 graduated with an average of $29,900 in debt. 3 million people over 60 are still paying off college loans. Some more data for you. Prior to the pandemic, 11.1% of student loans were 90 days or more delinquent or were in default. The average monthly student loan payment among those that were not in deferment was $300. The percentage of families headed by someone 50 or older with student loan debt more than tripled between 1989 and 2016, from 3.1% to 9.6%, the AARP Public Policy Institute reported. Since 2004, student loan debt among those 60 and older has grown the fastest of any age group, according to the Government Accountability Office. 114,000 people, 50 and older, had their Social Security payments garnished in 2015 to repay student debt. Sometimes the price is even higher. Researchers have found a direct correlation between areas that sent a higher number of students to college and an increased number of foreclosures in the years following. The authors of the study write, the gap between the total cost of college and the financial aid provided may still be too large for many families across the income distribution to bear. So, this brings us to a clear understanding of the challenge many families face as their kids enter high school and prepare to pick a college. And the consequences of financial troubles can ripple across the economy, leading to loss in property values and jobs. The problem that we're dealing with is that families often overpay for college, take on too much debt, and hurt their savings and retirement plans because they tumbled unprepared into the late stage college funding pressure cooker. It's hard to think about college planning as a major financial planning challenge for families when you just want to send your kid to a good school. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we need context for understanding all the forces that will come into play. Here's a quick rundown of many of the key aspects of this challenge. One, students and parents feel the academic and social pressure of competition. Colleges target your child, wanting him or her to apply mostly so that they can reject the application. Impending deadlines promote tension and rash decisions. Your student's college list may be unrealistic, influenced by popular ranking lists, and uninformed about actual costs, degree earning power, and the average number of years to graduation. School counselors aren't trained to help families figure out how to pay for college, and families lack knowledge and guidance. All of these dynamics contribute to something none of us want to have happen: overpaying for college. And that's why we're here today. That late stage college funding pressure cooker can deliver some very unhappy results. Families act rashly, and as a result, many parents tap home equity, take out large second mortgages to pay for colleges. As we saw earlier, many have not paid those off by the time they retire. Some divert retirement funds to pay tuition and have to work longer than they had hoped or planned for. The glaring truth is that most families just lack knowledge and guidance on how to get the best price for college. So, if you're joining me today for the very first time, my name is Eric Hagan. I am president of Capital Consulting Group. I'm a financial advisor, a wealth manager. We call Capital Consulting Group CCG. CCG consists of myself, of our Chief Investment Officer, Tom Fox, financial advisors, Dan Oshman and Rana Grant, client support, John Knutson and Marilyn Westmark. Altogether, we steward long term relationships with our clients and we work only for our clients. We are an independent firm. We are not owned by a bank, by an insurance company, or by some large financial institution. We're located in the southwest suburbs of the Twin Cities in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. We serve people all over Minnesota, and with our 100% virtual advisor capabilities, we serve people all over the country as well. We can help you see your entire financial situation, both today as well as every year into the future, through our personal wealth planning services. After today's message, if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go to clearfinancialfuture.com and check out the short 2-minute video. And we give our clients life savings the attention it deserves with our Smart Mix portfolio solution. Smart Mix is our personalized approach for individual investors. With that, welcome. Thank you for being here and committing your time to learning more about college planning and funding. Today's presentation is one of a series of messages that we put together as part of our Capital Classroom education series. You can find our entire upcoming schedule at capitalclassroom.com. I can assure you of one thing about this presentation, and that it is that I believe you will be better prepared to meet the late stage college planning challenges after listening to this talk. You may be wondering though, why is a financial advisor, a financial professional up here today talking about college? Well, I do this as a service to my clients and our community here because I've seen many of the struggles that families deal with. Getting kids through grade school and then high school is hard enough. You've been working and working, maybe saving for the eventual college tuition, and then boom, your kid is a junior or senior in college, and you realize you haven't planned enough. The costs of tuition plus room and board are higher than you expected. Stress increases as you receive piles of slick brochures from fancy colleges and hear your friends talk about where their kids are going. And just as we talked about, this leads to poor decisions, which may negatively impact your family's financial health for years and even decades to come. I've seen that happen, and I want to help you before you get to that stage. Your son or daughter can go to a good school, have a great college experience, and do it without saddling any of you with undue debt. I've seen that happen too. And that's why I do this presentation. And in case you're wondering, I also want to assure you that this is not a sales presentation. You will not hear anything remotely close to a sales pitch here today. You can see what we will review tonight coming up here, or today coming up here very soon. Now, in order to help you learn more about what we discussed today, I will be offering a handout later on today that summarizes everything. It's called The Parent's Guide to Cutting College Costs, and it's a good overview of this topic. Plus, I'll share a sheet that looks like this, and this will be available with a link later on in today's message for you to download and print off on your own. There are notes for the presentation here too. So I encourage you to take notes. You don't have to worry about writing everything down. All the key ideas will be right here on this sheet for you to read later. And with an issue such as college planning, where everyone's decision is unique and personal to their own circumstances, I invite people to come in for a complimentary meeting where we can conduct what's called an expected family contribution analysis for you to get an idea of what strategy would fit best into your overall retirement income plan. I'll tell you more about that towards the end of today's message. So back to the presentation. When it comes to late stage college planning, the biggest problem is that there is no plan. It's not well thought out, but until you send your acceptance letter, it's not too late at all. So let's continue. Now, I don't want to make things seem completely hopeless. The fact that you're here today indicates that you're ready to tackle what is actually a very big financial planning issue for families. That's a good sign because, as you'll see, there are steps to start taking now that will make this period of your life less stressful. You'll be less pressured if you have a late stage college funding strategy. By now, you're probably tired of me introducing all the complications. You're thinking, well, what is the first most important thing that I need to know so I can avoid overpaying? Paying? And that brings us to our first key. Parents must lead the college selection process with your child as co pilot because you have the most to lose. Lose means picking the wrong school, overpaying for it, or underestimating the total costs, including how many years it actually takes to earn a degree. Now, I'm not saying that your student shouldn't be involved in the college planning process. That's not true at all. But parents need to know what they're willing to pay and where the money is going to come from. It's all too easy to go into the searching process blindly, looking at every school that shows up at a college fair or sends you glossy marketing materials. Then your student falls in love with a certain school. I knew a dad who let his son apply to his dream school, NYU, just to see. Of course, the son got in. The father found it impossible to tell him no. Unfortunately, NYU is notoriously stingy with their scholarships and aid, and the dad ended up paying much more than he could really afford. It's much better to know your facts and figures at the beginning and search for colleges with eyes wide open. Here are a few items about college that you don't see or hear about much, but I want to put them in front of you as part of understanding why it's so important for you to be running the college selection process for your child. 24% of college students drop out after the first year. 9% transfer to another college for their sophomore year. College dropouts are 4 times more likely to default on student loans than those who graduate. There are several large organizations, most notably US News and World Reports, who love to tout their college rankings list. Do not be fooled. These are not lists that you should use to determine your child's college lists. Why? Because they encourage institutional bad behavior, cheating, and admissions tricks. They have a formula that can be gamed. Make popularity a big ratings factor. They use 6 year graduation rates. They encourage schools to favor affluent students through merit scholarships, and they don't measure what's important. So, next, you might be wondering, so let's say I'm in charge leading this process. The news is filled with the rising price of college. Can I send my child to a good school at all without blowing my savings? And the answer is yes, which brings us to our second main point. The news media likes to hype the rising cost of college and staggering student loans. These are true, but they miss the important detail that higher education is actually a buyer's market, despite news about increased costs and high rejection rates. Price discounts are quite common among state universities as well as private institutions. Schools give discounts through grants and scholarships. One thing you should take away from at this slide is it's clearly not just a student who gets scholarships and a students who get scholarships and grants. Just look at the high percentages of students getting price breaks. Nearly everyone who attends a private college receives some type of price cut from his or her school. For years now, the tuition discount has been creeping up. The percentage of students who receive grants and scholarships at private schools is actually at an historic high. The average tuition discount at private colleges and universities is also at an historic high. This discount is 59.5%. And on this slide, you'll see an example of how the typical discount slashes the tuition price. Now, you might be naturally wondering why schools are giving out so much money. Well, here's the reason. For most school, again, it is a buyer's market. This might seem strange because all the media attention is focused on the most elite universities that reject nearly all applicants. In fact, the schools at the top of the rankings heap compete to see who can reject the most teenagers. Most schools, however, don't enjoy this kind of advantage. They have to work hard to fill their freshman slots. And to do that, they have to offer financial enticements to get students to come to their schools. Here's a closer look at what colleges are up against during the admissions season. Only 27% of admissions directors at state schools met their goals by May 1st. 55% of admission directors at private and public schools did not meet their freshman goals by July 1st. And more than 2% of all admission directors said that they hadn't been concerned about meeting enrollment goals for fall of 2020. Now, you might be feeling intrigued or overwhelmed with this new information. And regardless, you probably want to know, what are the key things to focus on in order to successfully navigate the college funding process? Well, what you want to do is gather the pegs for your schools to start the process of identifying the best deal and the best price. PEGS is an acronym, an easy acronym that we created that speaks to some key information gathering that will get you going on your college journey. And PEGS stands for price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and salary. So let's take a minute and look at each one of these briefly. First, price, which means net price calculators. You use these tools to discover a school's true cost. So let's take a look. One of the most infuriating aspects of the college admission process is that traditionally, families couldn't know what any college was going to cost until their child received his or her financial aid or merit award package. Even worse, they might not have gotten the offer until the spring, which would give them little time to select a school by the deposit deadline, which is often May 1st. Applying to schools, however, does not have to be a financial crapshoot if you use net price calculators before your child applies to any colleges. A net price calculator is supposed to provide you with a personalized estimate of what a particular school will really cost. The net price represents what a student will have to pay after scholarships and grants from the federal and state governments and the school itself are subtracted. When using a calculator, some families will discover that the cost of a $55,000 university will be $20 or even $10,000, or maybe even lower. For other families, the cost really will be $55,000. But let's say, for example, that a college costs $50,000 and the student will receive a $30,000 award from the school and a state grant of $5,000. Well, the net price for the student would be just $15,000. The net price equals the true price of the college because it only considers free money and disregards loans when calculating the cost of a school. Federal law requires schools to post a net price calculator for freshmen on their websites. Some schools also provide a calculator for transfer students. If you want to avoid budget busting schools, it's critical to know what the actual prices of particular schools will be before your child falls in love with them. In fact, turning to net price calculators could ultimately save you tens of thousands of dollars by focusing your efforts on schools that will be more generous to your family. Too many parents get guilted into paying for a college that far outstrips their budget. This can jeopardize their own retirement plans. Knowing in advance what schools cost will help families draw up an appropriate college list and reduce or eliminate financial surprises. Thanks to net price calculators, there is no reason why students and parents can't have a pretty good idea what a college will offer before deciding whether to apply. Helpful calculators will require information from your tax return and your latest non retirement investment account statements. You'll want to gather them up before using the calculators. Your family should turn to these calculators to get a handle on what sort of applicants capture the best awards at an institution. What kind of grade point averages or test scores does it take for a student to win a greater award from a specific school? With this tool, families can manipulate the figures to see whether it would be worth it for their child, for instance, to take the SAT or ACT again. Would a higher test score boost a child's potential package? Would a slightly higher GPA even matter. It can also be important to measure what impact, if any, a family's home equity would have on an award. With so much money at stake, it's worth taking the time to use these calculators strategically. It can be hard finding a net price calculator on some school websites. An easy way to do it is to Google the name of the school and net price calculator. Accurate NPC results won't be available until later years in high school when a student's GPA and SAT or ACT scores are known. The reason for this is that it would be impossible for a school to know what kind of awards a child might get without knowing what his or her academic profile is. You need to understand that not all calculators are good ones. The weakest calculators rely on the federal template. Using these could take less than a minute to complete. The questions are minimal, which leads to dubious cost estimates. The federal calculator only asks for income ranges, but a good calculator will require figures off of your latest income tax return. Bad calculators also rely on old cost data. Some net price calculators are still using 2015 to 2016 costs, so check how old the figures are. These federal calculators are only meant to provide personalized cost estimates to families seeking needs based aid. And even then, the need based aid answers are simply averages. They do not calculate merit scholarships. If you see this icon displayed on a website, it means the school uses the federal net price calculator. Not all schools use the federal calculator, however, will display this icon. Now let's move on to the E in PEGS, and that stands for expected family contribution. This is a federally calculated number that tells you what you are expected to pay. Your expected family contribution is a dollar figure that represents what a financial aid formula believes your household should contribute to pay for 1 year of a child's college education. But it's not necessarily what you will pay. Your EFC is based on a number of factors, including income, non retirement money, education account assets, size of the household, marital status of the parents, and number of students in college. The EFC will give you a good idea whether you will qualify for need based aid or if you should seek out schools that provide merit scholarships. This helps you as you go shopping for colleges. It can be tricky, but this is an area that we can help. I'll walk you through obtaining your EFC and help you learn how to use it when comparing schools. We'll talk more about that towards the end of today's message. Two EFC financial aid formulas exist. The federal formula is tied to the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, or FAFSA. This is the federal aid application that students must complete to qualify for federal and state aid at any school they attend. The vast majority of colleges will also use the FAFSA to determine who will receive their own in house aid. I'll explain the FAFSA more in just a second. The institutional formula is tied to the CSS profile, which is a creature of the College Board. This formula is used by roughly 200 private schools to determine who will get their in house money. A tiny number of public universities, including the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan, also use the profile. The two formulas do have some significant differences. Sometimes the EFCs using each of these formulas will be similar, but other times they will not. I want to take a step back and explain the timeline here. You can get a free estimate of your EFC from collegeboard.com, which will be pretty close to the official one. For your official EFC, and in order to qualify for any help, you must complete the free application for federal student aid, again known as the FAFSA, which you can find at fafsa.ed.gov. The first day that parents can file for financial aid is on October 1st of the child's senior year in high school. Parents will be using 2-year-old tax returns to complete the FAFSA, so there's no reason not to file the application as soon as possible. This is really important to know. You must file your FAFSA early. Aid from states and public universities can run out, so filing early is essential. And if you miss the deadline to file the FAFSA in your state, you will be ineligible for that state aid. Some states have early deadlines as well. And finally, if you don't think that you will qualify for financial aid, applying early to state universities may boost your chances of merit scholarships since deadlines can be early. The lowest EFC a family can have is 0. That means a student has no ability to pay for college. In contrast, there's no cap on an EFC for high income families. It's possible to have an EFC of $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 or higher. When the EFC is high and the need based aid is out of the question, you look for schools that provide merit scholarships to affluent students. As I said before, it's best to get a ballpark idea of what your EFC will be in a child's freshman year of high school or even earlier. Obtaining a preliminary EFC will give you a rough idea of what kind of financial obligation you will face. Families will usually have to pay more for college than their EFC indicates that they can afford because most schools do not meet 100% of a student's demonstrated financial need. Consequently, it's important to identify the most generous schools that would consider your child an attractive candidate. We'll go into more details about this in a little bit. The EFC calculator can be tricky in terms of understanding which aspects of your finances need to be included and excluded when you complete the process. This is a service that I can offer whenever I make this presentation. I'll give you more details later on how you can request an EFC analysis. Your EFC is produced through a calculator on the College Board's website. It uses both of the methodologies that we discussed before and produces two EFCs for you, one generated by the federal FAFSA formula and the other by the institutional profile formula. In order to get a complete and accurate EFC, you'll need your latest tax returns and other non-retirement financial records. All right, so let's take a couple of minutes to run through some EFC scenarios to give you an idea of what EFCs are possible. Let's start here with an example from a middle class family with average income and low savings. Now, I'm only using non-retirement money in my examples because the formulas do not consider retirement money in their calculations. In this example, there is a married couple with one child heading to college and a younger sibling. So let's look at their EFC results. The EFC for this family using both methodologies is around $2,500. With this modest EFC, the family would ideally be looking for schools that provide very good need-based aid because their ability to pay for college is limited. This could potentially come from in-state universities or from private colleges that offer generous aid. Here's an example of how much aid a family with a low EFC of 2,500 could be eligible for when applying to an expensive school. It's important to add that only 6 dozen or so colleges and universities say they meet the full financial need of their students. So now let's look at a higher income family. This family has more assets, home equity, and considerably more income. Like the previous example, there are 4 in the household with married parents and the oldest heading to college. The EFC for this household ranges from $34,426 to $35,165. There would be some elite schools that would provide this family with need-based aid, but with the vast majority of schools, the family would be looking for institutions that provide hefty merit scholarships to higher income students. There is no cap on a family's EFC, so some very wealthy parents will have EFCs that exceed the cost of an expensive private university. Now let's look at the same family, but with 2 kids in college and an adjusted gross income or AGI of $150,000. This would be the EFC for each child. With a reduced EFC, the family's chances for need-based aid rise significantly. It's important to understand that a family's federal EFC for each child drops by 50% and the institutional EFC drops by about 40% when there are two children in college. So a family that might not qualify for need-based financial aid with one child in college may be eligible with two or more in college. You can determine if a student would be eligible for need-based aid by subtracting the EFC from a school's price tag. In this example, there's no chance for need-based aid because the family's EFC exceeds the price of the private college. The student would not qualify for need-based aid. Instead, the student would hope for a merit scholarship. In this scenario, the student would be eligible for need-based up to $23,000 from the private college because the price of this institution is far more expensive and exceeds the family's EFC. As a practical matter, a family with an EFC this high would typically be looking for schools that provide generous merit scholarships. It would primarily be elite schools with excellent financial aid that would give this family need-based aid. So, to sum up, let's look at college funding strategies informed by two different EFCs. First, families with a small EFC should look for colleges that provide generous need based financial aid, as well as their own state schools that will have need based programs for residents. Remember, it's also important to file the FAFSA as early as you can, since students tend to receive twice as much grant money from state programs or state universities. Write down that date to file your FAFSA, October 1st of your child's senior year. Now, families with large EFCs should look for private and state schools that give good aid to many students. The most elite private universities tend to give little to no merit scholarships because they have plenty of high income students who will come without a price break. So that gives you a sense of how the EFC plays out. After you obtain your EFC, you can hone in on what type of schools are the most appropriate to aim for. All right. So the G in PEGS stands for graduation rate. This part of your school analysis is looking for what percent of students graduate and how long it takes them to do so. Parents assume that their child will graduate in 4 years, but this usually actually does not happen. According to federal statistics, the 4 year graduation rate for private colleges and universities is 55% and 39% for state schools. It's always important to check the 4 year graduation rate since a delay in graduation can significantly boost the cost of college. There can be major differences among the same type of schools, so always be sure to check. You can find 4, 5, and 6 year graduation rates at College Results online. You can also find the 6 year graduation rates broken down by race and ethnicity, gender, and income. The difference between graduation rates among men and women, as well as different ethnicities, can be dramatic. To find the site, just go to Google and put in college completion. Here's an example of a school with an excellent graduation rate. You'll see the overall grad rate as well as broken down various factors. And please note that college data is often a few years behind since the government takes so long to release statistics. Here's an example of a university, San Diego State, that has an average graduation rate for a state institution. So that's what you need to focus on for graduation rates. Now on to the final letter in PEGS, and that is S. S in PEGS stands for salary. As part of your evaluation process, you may also want to look at a school's salary outcomes and consider them in the context of how much you're paying for your child's degree. Parents tend to overpay based on assumptions and rankings, but a big investment isn't always worth it. The place to research salary outcomes in this website is called Educate to Career. It shows you the average salaries by major of graduates of a certain institution 10 years after graduation. Naturally, as you're weighing accepting one college offer versus another, this could be an effective tool to use. So let's look at an example. Here are two Northeast schools with strong engineering programs. Let's suppose your child gets into both. What does that mean in terms of price? Here you can see that there's quite a difference in price between them, and we're looking at out of state tuition. If you extrapolate that out 4 years, the difference between $132,000 for NIIT and, I'm sorry, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and $220,000 for Drexel is $88,000. If you live in New Jersey, it would be even more extreme. Now let's look at salaries for a mechanical engineer from Drexel. So you see, Educate to Career runs the occupation titles down the left and the salaries on the right. Look closely because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring up the same information for the New Jersey Institute of Technology. So here we go. Hard to tell a difference, right? It's not much, a couple of $100 here and there, mostly. I'll go back again. So here's Drexel, and here's New Jersey Institute of Technology. Again, not a big difference. Our example shows that the adage, you get what you pay for, does not necessarily apply to college degrees, but the idea of a return on investment is certainly a factor to consider. Many of us know from life experiences that job salaries aren't arranged in any sort of neat continuum of highest to lowest based on the school's brand name. It just does not work out that way. Getting clarity about the pegs for the schools on your list is very helpful, but it's not the whole picture yet. You're still probably wondering, will my kid qualify for financial aid and how does that fit with grants, scholarships, and loans? And this brings us to our fourth key. The common question, will my kid qualify for aid, is best answered when you understand how discounts, scholarships, and loans work to produce the lowest college cost possible. So let's look at types of financial aid first. There are four that you see here. And just so that we're all on the same page, let's run through their definitions quickly. First, we have grants. They do not need to be repaid. They're primarily need-based, and they're often from the state or federal government, such as Pell Grants. The second related source of money is scholarships. They also do not need to be repaid, are usually awarded based on merit or other criteria such as ethnicity, geographic location, athletics, academic merit, etc. And they come from a variety of sources, from private foundations, corporations, and the colleges themselves. And then there are loans. We won't go deeply into college loans now, but there are two main types of federal loans strictly for the student. The more attractive option is the direct subsidized loan, where the government pays the interest while the student is in school and during grace and deferment periods. There must be demonstrated financial need to qualify for this loan. Then there is the direct unsubsidized loan, where the student pays the interest during all periods or defers interest while enrolled, which will accumulate. There is no financial need required for unsubsidized loans. We also have direct plus loans for parents. These loans are designed to help families pay for education expenses not covered by other financial aid. And finally, here are some other options. You could get a home equity loan. Keep in mind the length of the repayment period and how that will impact your retirement plan. You can also get private loans to pay for college, and these are typically they typically require very good to excellent credit. There are a range of institutions that underwrite these types of loans as well. So do your shopping. Now, about two-thirds of students pay for college with the help of scholarships and grants. And that type of financial assistance comes from the four sources that you see here. The two biggest sources are from the federal government and the institutions themselves. So let's look at what comprises federal aid. These are the three sources of federal help for parents and students. Most are income-based, grants and work-study jobs, loans for student and parents, and tax credits such as the American Opportunity Tax Credit and the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. Families who are shut out of federal grants can qualify for federal college loans since there are no income limits. However, without filing the FAFSA, parents and students do not have access to federal student and parent loans. The vast majority of federal money is awarded through the Pell Grant program. The maximum Pell Grant award is currently $6,495. Students who are eligible for this full grant must have adjusted gross family incomes of 25 or $27,000 or less. The larger the family income and the smaller the size of the household, the lower the potential Pell award. According to federal statistics, 92% of Pell Grant recipients have household adjusted gross incomes of under $60,000. So that's the federal government. Now let's talk about the states. All states have aid programs, but they vary in what they offer. Most state grants go to students who require financial assistance. Some states, however, are dispensing most or all of their aid based on such factors as grade point averages and standardized test scores. Most of the states that award the majority of their aid by merit are located in the South, and these programs often benefit more affluent students. You can find links to the aid programs that are available in each of the 50 states by visiting the website of the National Association of Student Financial Aid and Administrators. Unless money is no object, it makes sense for a student to include one or more in-state public universities on their college list. In-state schools, however, won't always be the least expensive option, even though that is a widely held belief. If you need financial aid, you need to be aware that public universities very rarely give need based aid to non residents. State universities routinely reserve that money for their residents. The tuition price for non residents is typically 2 to 3 times higher. Non residents looking for college money should consider merit scholarships, which are awarded regardless of income. The percentage of college money devoted to merit scholarships has grown dramatically. This is due to three reasons. Number one, administrators of state universities are interested in increasing their U.S. News rankings just like peers at private colleges. One way to do that is to give merit awards to attract students with higher academic profiles that U.S. News favors in its rankings methodology. Second, public universities also use merit scholarships to attract non residents who will still typically pay more than in state students, which helps the institution's financial bottom line, especially as schools still suffer from reduced state government funding beginning with the recession from a decade ago. And then finally, the competition for good students is so high among many state universities that they find it necessary to boost their merit scholarship awards. State schools often have too many applicants to look at a student holistically. A school could have tens of thousands of applicants. Consequently, state universities must rely heavily on GPA and SAT and ACT scores to make admission decisions and dispense merit awards. This makes it easier to get a good sense of what kind of merit scholarship a student might qualify for at a public university. Use Google to find scholarships that an individual school offers. Scholarships can be easier to get and larger at state universities that are less popular. For instance, what it takes to win a merit scholarship at the University of Colorado, a very popular destination, is more difficult academically than what it would take to win an award at the University of New Mexico or the University of Maine. Keep in mind that many of the most popular state universities, which enjoy great brand names and are located in desirable locations, such as near ski slopes, can command higher prices for outside students. The sticker prices are going to be lower at schools that aren't in high demand. Institutions that are most likely to meet their admission goals are public research universities like UCLA, UC Berkeley, Virginia, Michigan, and elite private research universities like the Ivies. These schools don't have to worry about attracting applicants with scholarships. Here's an illustration of how state universities can share their merit awards with families. This one was pulled off of the website of the University of Utah. Individual academic departments can offer their own scholarships as well. For affluent families, the most likely source of money will be from the colleges themselves. The vast majority of private schools provide merit money to affluent students. These colleges also provide need based aid. You may be surprised that close to a third of college students are enrolled in private, nonprofit colleges. Many parents automatically assume that private colleges will be too expensive and don't consider them, which can be a mistake. It's true that the price tags for private schools are more expensive than in state universities, but the actual price won't always be as high. Think back to key number two. Higher education is actually a buyer's market, despite news about increased costs and high rejection rates. For years now, the tuition discount has been creeping up. The percentage of students who receive grants and scholarships at private schools is actually at an historic high. It's now about 89%. For families who won't qualify for need based aid, private colleges and universities routinely award merit scholarships. Schools also widely practice what's called preferential packaging. The best awards go to the applicants that an institution wants the most. A student is more likely to obtain a good package if they are in the top 25% of the accepted students at that institution. What families also need to understand is that the more a college costs, the more likely a family would qualify for need based aid. At some schools, accepted students could end up with both need based aid and a merit scholarship. If you won't qualify for need based aid and money is tight, the worst place to apply to college from a financial standpoint are the most highly ranked universities. Look at the top of US News rankings and you'll see what kinds of schools this includes. Universities in this category include the Ivies, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, and Northwestern. Schools like these are deluged with high income candidates, so they do not have to offer merit scholarships or often a token amount to attract great candidates who are willing to pay full price. While there are nearly 2,800 four-year colleges and universities in the United States, there are less than 6 dozen to claim that they meet 100% of the demonstrated financial need of all or most of their freshmen. The schools that are most likely to provide the best need based financial aid are the elite schools. If you get into schools like those on the slide and your family needs a great deal of financial help, you are likely going to get it. In contrast, if you are wealthy and your child gets into one of these highly rated schools, you are likely to pay full price. The schools that offer the most generous need based aid are among the most highly ranked by US News and World Report. These schools tend to have large endowments, and they also attract a lot of students who pay full price so that they can afford to offer generous packages to those who need help. Students requiring financial assistance who get into schools like these have essentially won an education lottery. Of course, these schools are among the hardest to get into. On the other hand, the schools on this slide don't give merit aid to students who don't qualify for financial need. They don't have to because there are plenty of high income students whose parents will pay full price. The schools most likely to provide discounts to nearly all of their accepted students are the ones that aren't as well known. Many institutions that fall into that category are colleges and master's level universities. Colleges often only educate undergraduates and have few, if any, graduate programs. Master's level universities have few PhD programs and aren't research intense institutions. In contrast, professor research and educating graduate students are the number one and two priorities of research universities. Undergraduates represent the third priority at these schools. The institutions that are least likely to provide merit awards are research universities. That's because they are so popular that they don't need to offer discounts to as many of their students. High income students who attend elite research universities are more likely to pay full price or close to it. One way to get a quick look at whether a school will provide good need based aid or merit awards is to head to the College Board's website. Type in the name of a school on the homepage and then click on the school's paying link. You'll be brought to a page with the school's cost of attendance. Then click on the financial aid by the numbers link. That's where you'll see some interesting statistics. I'm going to illustrate what you can find in a school's financial aid by the numbers section by using Yale University. On this slide, you can see up at the top that the school meets 100% of financial need, and it also meets the full need of 100% of its undergraduates. That is excellent. In fact, this is as good as it gets for someone who needs help with college costs. Yale's average need based award is $61,067, and this is high. This slide also shows you that Yale does not give merit scholarships. The average non need based aid category is blank. That means a wealthy family with a high EFC will pay full price for Yale. This slide illustrates a school, NYU, that typically provides poor financial aid and small merit awards. On average, this popular school only meets 71% of need, which is poor. The average need based award is $37,080, which is small considering the school's cost of attendance is over $78,000. Just 12% of students get their full financial need met. The average merit award is $3,379, which is again small considering NYU's price tag. Students needing a lot of financial aid would likely need to borrow heavily to attend this school, and affluent students are likely to pay full price or close to it. In this example, you will see that the typical financial aid package isn't nearly as good as Yale's, but it does provide affluent students with much higher merit awards than NYU. Just like many private colleges, Juni, I'm going to mispronounce it, Juniata College in Pennsylvania has to provide better merit awards to attract students to a school that doesn't enjoy a national reputation. Its average merit scholarship is $29,360. Now let's look at private scholarships. Private scholarships are outside awards offered by foundations, charities, companies, and civic groups. Parents often don't realize that private scholarships represent the smallest source of college money. The competition for nationally known private scholarship is fierce. In a recent year, for instance, the Coca Cola Scholars received 112,000 applications for just 250 awards. This makes Coca Cola Scholars about 25 times as selective as Stanford. Your children will face better odds if they focus on capturing local scholarships. These are the scholarships that turn up via high school counselors, libraries, parent workplaces, or in local papers. They aren't as easy to find, so not as many students will be applying. And in fact, scholarship sites like FastWeb, scholarships.com, and the College Board search engine usually do not have these local contests in their databases. Students may also have better luck looking at scholarships that require essays, since plenty of teenagers don't want to hassle with this requirement. Students who win private scholarships are often surprised to discover that their awards end up reducing their financial aid package. Since students have to report all outside scholarships to the financial aid offices, many schools see this as an opportunity to have some money, to save some money and reduce the amount of the money they award to the student. In cases where the amount of the scholarship would push the total financial aid award over the cost of attendance, the federal government requires schools to adjust the financial aid award. You cannot receive more money than it would cost to go to a school. If a teen wins a private scholarship, the college could shrink his or her financial aid package by the amount of the award. So if a child wins a $3,000 scholarship, the college could cut the aid package by $3,000. In the best case scenario, the school will reduce the loan portion of the package by the amount of the outside scholarship, but it can also shrink the grant or reduce both the grant and loan portion. Each school maintains its own policy on how it applies an outside scholarship to a student's financial aid package. You'll have to check with each school for its policy regarding outside scholarships. Ironically, this scholarship practice will not affect the students most in a position to afford college. Affluent students who receive merit scholarships from their schools don't have to worry about outside scholarships shrinking their awards. Higher income students who don't qualify for financial aid can earn any number of outside scholarships and won't jeopardize their institutional merit scholarships. All right, so we're getting to the end of today's message, and no doubt many of you may be feeling like, yikes, this is so much information. How do we smartly proceed and process all of it? And it's a good question that leads us to our final set of points. So, first, let's look at where we started. We started with the main challenge. Families often overpay for college, take on too much debt, and hurt their savings and retirement plans because they tumbled unprepared into the late stage college funding pressure cooker. Then we've looked at the details behind these main points. One, parents must lead the college selection process. Higher education is actually a buyer's market. The need to gather the pegs. Remember price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and starting salary. And then lastly, understand how financial aid works and get the best price. So, with that, this brings us naturally to the conclusion that you need to start developing your college funding strategy now by getting an expected family contribution analysis. From that baseline, you can begin to gather the rest of the critical information that you need to start the hunt for the right school with the lowest possible tuition while protecting your retirement plans. College education is a buyer's market, and the old adage, knowledge is power, is true. When you act as an informed consumer, you can get the best education at the lowest cost and minimize the risk of damaging your retirement savings. So, I'd like to invite you to come to my office for a complimentary one on one expected family contribution analysis, where we will go through a lot of this information that we covered today, but with a personal focus on your family and your student. We'll find your expected family contribution together, since using the calculator can be a little bit tricky, and some parents just guess when filling out some of the questions. Taking your EFC and what you are actually prepared to pay, you can go college shopping and use those net price calculators to look at schools where your child should and should not apply. So take the first step now. Sign up for an EFC analysis meeting. I put an easy link for you to go to. Just go to your browser, type in www.schedulewitheric.com, scroll down to where it says request an EFC analysis meeting, and you'll be able to pick a time on my calendar at your convenience. And I'd like to leave you with one last thought. Paying for college is one of the biggest purchases of your life next to a house. So do your research and get it right. Again, if you'd like some help starting this process, you can go to this website, schedulewitheric.com, and I look forward to seeing you on the calendar very soon. That concludes today's message. Again, I thank you for taking the time to be with me here today, and I will sign us off. We are right at the top of the hour, so good timing. Thanks, everybody. Take care.